All right, so this is Dr. Bagley. Thank you very much for joining me. Okay, so we're going to go into, we're going to get into this today. Matthew's 10. Let's look at it. Verse 7, as we go, preach, saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick. We talked about that. Cleanse the leper. Okay, we talked about that. Raise the dead. We just talked about that. Please review that, please. And so today we're going to talk about cast out devils. Okay. I want us to get on the same page. Let's talk about spirits. Let's talk about the spirits that we're going to deal with. Moses says one is the light, one is the darkness. But what does that really look like? Okay, so the analogy, if there was parents that had two children and one is obedient to me, the parent, and the other one is not so obedient to me, the parent. And let's assume that I'm going to send the non-obedient out from the house and just put them somewhere else. Let's say we put them on earth. The idea that Moses saying one is the light versus one is the darkness ultimately just simply means one is obedient to God. The other one is not obedient to God. The not so obedient to God is on this earth. The obedient ones are still in heaven. The idea that we're dealing with spirits, you should understand that regardless of the obedience versus non-obedience, they both are the same. Meaning, if the parent have two children, one obedient, one disobedient, they still are of me. They still have the same image, the likeness. They're my children. Nothing changed about them except the fact that one is obedient, one is not. Likewise, when we're dealing with unclean spirits, the unclean, the devil, the demons, all we're really saying is those spirits that came from heaven are disobedient to God. And because they're disobedient to God, they are unclean to us. Why? Because we were created by God, not the flesh, the spirit, the soul, the consciousness of us. Okay? So if you understand what I just said, let's go to Mark 5 and I'll outline what it looks like to cast out devils. Mark 5, let's start in verse 6. But when he saw Jesus afar, and we're talking about the man who has unclean spirits within, saw Yeshua afar, he ran and worshiped him. Now, I want you to always, when you're dealing with spirits and people, always think, who's the driver? Who's the passengers? Okay? So when the man saw Jesus afar off, he ran and worshiped him and cried with a loud voice and says, what have I to do with thee, Jesus, thy Son of the Most High God? Now, in context, you have to be committed to God before you get into this of what's going on. And we'll talk about that more in detail. Let's just continue. I enjoy thee, by God, that thy torment me not. Wait a minute. Does this sound right? Let's continue. Verse 8. For he said unto him, come out of the man, thy unclean spirit. The man came to Jesus to worship him, and in his worshiping him, he's saying something happened where the man is asking Yeshua not to torment him. I don't get it. If he has unclean spirits in him, why would Yeshua torment him? It's because the man has unclean spirits, because the man has it, wants it, asks for it. Okay? I'll get into that in a second. And he asked him, Yeshua asked him, what is your name? And he said, saying, my name is Legions, for we are many. And verse 10, and he besought him, the man besought Jesus much that he would not send them, the legions, out of the country. Here's where it gets kind of tricky. An unclean spirit is communicating with Yeshua. Yeshua asks the man, what is your name? The driver of the vehicle has a name, meaning given to him by his parents. But the unclean spirit within the man, because we recognize that he has an unclean passenger within the vehicle. What is your name? The passenger's name. When the passenger speaks through the body of the man, the passenger said, my name is Legions. The reason I'm calling myself Legions is because I'm the spokesman for all of us. Okay. When we talk about the body having the form, one should always understand it is not one body to one form. It is a form. That's all. How many cells are in your body? Trillions of cells. So think of it in that context. Okay, now, without getting too into this, you have a relationship, a commitment to God. One, you have to know the name of the unclean spirits. Okay? The spirits then communicate with you in a common, decent voice. It is not Hollywood. It is not dramatic. It's like I'm talking to you. When you talk to the unclean spirits, the argument, besought him, verse 10, besought him much that he would not send them away out of the country. That's a concern from him. The reason it's concern is because when you take a spirit out from one body, you have to understand that spirit needs to go into another body. This type of spirit is an unclean spirit. This type of spirit is in the body. It's assigned to the body. It is not a floating around spirit that's just floating everywhere. No, that's not how it works. That's ghost that just floats everywhere. Limbo. Spirits have a purpose. They have a means to an end. When they go into a body, the means to an end is to keep this person, the driver, from God. So when Yeshua comes, what is your name? The passenger says, I'm Legions. Okay, don't send us away out into the country. Okay, Yeshua agrees. Why does Yeshua agree? Because if he takes the spirit out of that one man, and there's legions, those spirits can go into other unclean people. Okay. verse 11. Now there was nigh in the mountains a great herd of swine feeding. 12. And all the devils besought him, saying, Send us into the swines, that we may enter into them. Yeshua controlled the circumstances. The request from them has been heard. The answer has been the swines. Why? To take an unclean spirit and put it in a clean person or a clean animal is the rules against God. Unclean spirits can only go into an unclean body. In this context, the swines. That they may enter them in verse 13 and for when Jesus gave them leave. In other words, he knew how to control them, command them. He just gave them leave. And the unclean spirits went out of that one man and entered into the swine, and herd ran violently down the steep place into the sea, and there were about 2,000 and were choked in the sea. Okay. Unclean spirit goes into an unclean body called the swines. The unclean swines decides to go out and go over and kill themselves. How come if they were so apt to go kill themselves, why then they didn't kill themselves within the man? They didn't kill themselves, commit suicide to themselves because of the man nor the pigs. Here's a lesson one must need to learn. An unclean spirit don't want to listen to God. And if the unclean spirit don't want to listen to God, why would an unclean spirit listen to you or Yeshua in this context? The unclean spirit worked with Yeshua because Yeshua possessed the powers at be to save this person. The out was the pigs, unclean to unclean. But if the spirits who don't want to listen to God listens to you or Yeshua, there's something that must be committed. And in this context, an offering. A payment must be given. In this story, let's continue reading. The swine went under the sea. They choked themselves. It was about 2,000 pigs, 2,000 swines went over the edge. And verse 14, and they fled, and swines fled, and told it to the city. So those that they fed the swines fled and told the city and the country, and they went out to see what was done. And they came to Jesus and said to him, that was possessed with the devils, the man that was possessed with the devils had legions, sitting, the clothed, and his right mind. He's now in his right mind, and they afraid. 16, and they that saw it told them how it befell to him that was possessed with the devil, and also concerning the swines. Verse 17, and they begot to pray him to depart out of their coast. Pray him, Jesus, to depart out of the coast. Jesus just healed a man, brought the man from legions and brought him into his right mind. And these people are casting him out of the coast, out of this city that he just got there. Why are they doing this to Jesus? Because of the payment. Ask yourself, is saving one man, which is a good thing, saving one man worth 2,000 pigs going over, killing themselves, which affects the owner and the caretakers of the pigs? So the payment that the unclean spirits has been given was the payment of suffering to the caretakers and the owner. Ask yourself, is saving one person worth unemployed people and a man who just has to file bankruptcy for his business? You will not ever win over the unclean spirits. It's very tempting, like the man who actually received the unclean spirits. He wanted the unclean spirits, but you cannot. You cannot win. If they are against God and you think you can control them by saying, please come in me, or please go out of a body, and they listen to you, who are you? Regardless of who you are, you have to pay a payment. In the context of a unclean spirit coming into you, like for an example, entertaining. I want to be a singer. I want to be an actor. I want to be a musician. I want to be this, that, and the other. A payment must be paid. Some contexts, it's the commitment that your soul is going to the darkness, meaning the darkness will agree to that because your soul's not going into the heaven, to the light. On the other hand, a commitment, a payment must be a parent, a relative. I commit, kill them. A life for a life. In all cases, someone who casts demons out of people, you got to put them in a unclean. You got to put them somewhere. But the other aspect of putting them somewhere, there's a payment that must be paid. Will it be worth it? The question, ultimately, the payment be paid. In this story gives us a very clear understanding of what it takes to cast out demons. You have to be holy enough. You have to be righteous enough. You have to be closer to God, as close as you can get. You have to know who the names of the demons are. You have to know the circumstances of whom the passengers are versus the person is. There is a person and then there's a passenger. Excuse me. You have to then understand there's a communication. That communication is, am I going to do what you say or not? If I do what you say, you have to be aware. Where are you going to put them? From one body to another body. What are you going to do? And is it saving one person worth destroying another person or persons? That by itself is the danger of dealing with unclean spirits. It is not fair. We have no authority other than what Yeshua just expressed. Yeshua could not control the outcome of the man and the workers filing for bankruptcy. And I believe Yeshua left the coast because he knew It wasn't worth it. Saving one man for this. It just wasn't worth it. And so to go against that, he just left. You have to be mindful of these things. All right, let's go to Ephesians 6. This is Paul now. The story of Ephesians, the church in Ephesians, verse 11, chapter 6, verse 11. Put on the whole armor of God. This is what I said. You have to have a relationship of a God, not just a relationship, a commitment to God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. Because when you introduce yourself to the devil is quickly going to ask, who are you? If you can't be identified as a man of a woman of God, I feel sorry for you. The next verse is, for we wrestle not against flesh. Wrestling is not like spirit to spirit wrestling. No, we wrestle because what we do, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. We wrestle against spirits. And notice how Paul is saying against principalities, against powers, against rulers of the darkness of the world, of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. The armor of God can only protect you from the wiles of the devil. But when you get against principalities, powers, rulers of darkness of this world, spiritual wickedness in high places, you're going to wrestle. And you're going to lose. Meaning, you're going to die. Which is fine if you're close to God. We call that, or those, martyrs. Because the point is, Yeshua said in Matthew 10, we're casting out devils. We're not wrestling, like Paul said, we're not wrestling against principalities, powers, against rulers of darkness of the world, spiritual wickedness in high places. We're not. Yeshua says, I'm not training you to do that. Paul, on the other hand, says, yes, we can do that. Put on the armor of God. However, no, that's not going to work. It's not going to work in the context that you have to be so committed to God. And 99.9% of people on this earth are not. And they think they have the power against principalities, rulers of darkness, spiritual wickedness. They don't. They don't. This earth is and has been indoctrinated with those evil spirits before the thought of you and I and Adam and woman and others. The only thing we have that's benefiting us is the commitment that we have with God. So that when the devils and the demons and the principalities and the powers and rulers and the spiritual witnesses get to touch you, they can destroy the body, but they can't destroy the soul. The soul is of God. And if the soul knows it's of God, when they destroy the body, their soul can go to the heaven of the light as a martyr. So, when Yeshua says in Matthew 10, "Go, disciples, go and preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand." Yes, we have the God, the creator, the gods, the spirits, the ranks, and all of those things. We have all of that. And we can work within all of that. And we have our tools to work within all of that. And when we have the Holy Ghost, which is our passenger, as long as we have the guardian angel of the light, we can go out and heal the sick, cleanse the leper, raise the dead, cast out devils. But then when you get with Paul level, Paul, you better be tight with God. Or when they touch you and you die, it's a sad thing that God, the creator, will say to you, I know you not. Because if you don't make it in that heaven, and you're not making it in this heaven, the only place for you to go is hell, the prison for all unclean spirits, including God's created spirits, man, woman, us. Okay? So, this video is just to give you an introduction of the reality of dealing with cast out devils, put on the armor of God, wrestle against, we're not wrestling against flesh and blood, those things. Just an introduction, just to get your eyes there. The process of doing it is like Yeshua. You're not putting a sign on a building. You're not going to church and say, I have this title, blah, blah, blah. If you see anybody and anybody's just doing that, just run from them, please. The position is that the spirit of you have such a closeness with God, they recognize you. Okay? They recognize you. You're not, they went to Jesus. Jesus didn't go to them. Okay? Paul, on the other hand, is recognizing that you're going to them, but you're not going to them. You're going to be working with them. Paul is his church. He has a church. His church is rankings to help the community, help. And so you're going against those things, right? But you better have a relationship with God, the creator. Okay? All right. So that's just today's lesson. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please let me know. Get in contact with me some kind of way. And if you want to know more detail about what we talked about, I'll help you, because again, I'm not putting that out. That's dangerous. But yeah, so if you have any questions, let me know. And if nothing else, we'll continue on. We'll continue on. All right, look out for the next one. All right, bye-bye.